Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and as promised, I wanted to do a video called Top 10 Movies That Need a Remake. And I thought that this would be a very challenging list to put together, and it was a little bit challenging because for the most part, a lot of these movies are horror movies, which I noticed. And also, there were a couple of comedies that came to mind, but I thought I wouldn't want a remake of a comedy. I would just want like a sequel or maybe like a reboot. I wouldn't want them to remake American Pie. I would just want, another sequel with the original cast. Or Ghostbusters, obviously that's going to get another sequel. That's fine. But it doesn't need a remake. But there are a lot of older horror films that I think could use a remake, honestly. That's the thing too that I see with Blumhouse and how they just remake and redo all these popular franchise movies like Halloween, Scream, and it's why don't you take that energy and remake a movie like Wood Chipper Massacre or something like that, something really obscure from back then that wasn't very good, which I did really like Wood Chipper, but I'm just saying in general, it seems like when they remake things nowadays, it's more so about just remaking so that you can get the money for the title. You can get people to come see it because, oh, it's the new this. Or it's the Uncharted movie. It's the Jeepers Creepers movie. It doesn't really feel like they're putting out a product that is worth putting out. It just seems like they want the money. And it's fine to want money, but at the same time, wouldn't it be better if there was some logic and reasoning behind these choices? There are plenty of movies that you could remake, and a lot of them too, they wouldn't have the same high expectations. And so let's say if you remade The Gorgon, that is a pretty popular Hammer movie, but it wouldn't be as popular as, let's say, Halloween. So it wouldn't have the same expectations from a fan base. You'd have a couple of people who would be interested in it, and then if it was good, you get that word of mouth, and everyone would go to see it. And they wouldn't even care. They'd be like, ooh, wow, that they would, even though they don't know what the Gorgon is, they would still care to just go see a good movie. So, I do have one honorable mention. This is not a movie, though. It's a TV season. Originally, I was going to have this at number 2 because I really thought this came to mind automatically. And that is Better Call Saul Season 6. The final season or aka Better Call Kim. And the reason why is because it was terrible. I don't care that there's all these fake people who say that it's a masterpiece and say that it's the greatest TV season of all time, because that's not the truth. This was a terrible season. It was a horrible ending to the series. It was rushed to an ending. It was sloppy. It was bad. It had agendas. It was so mean-spirited towards its main character. And so that's where I'm really getting at here, is that it felt like they had an original plan for the final season. And maybe the original plan was a lot better. Maybe if they had done all the original stuff, then I would have actually liked it. But then they thought, well, people, they liked Walter from Breaking Bad too much. and they hated Skylar too much. And so we need to do like the opposite of Breaking Bad, so that we can try to force people to get into the mindset of Kim is the greatest character ever, and then the main character, Jimmy, he's terrible, and he's the worst, and we should all hate him. And so they completely changed the plans for the entire season around. And there's some really gaping plot holes and missed opportunities with characters that let you know that, like, yeah, they really changed everything at the last minute. And it's too bad because there were so many potentially great things they could have done this season. Like doing Breaking Bad from Jimmy's perspective, and just ending with the Gene story too, like what was going to happen with Gene and the cab driver. Like so many interesting things that were ruined by these terrible writers. And the worst part of it was that they were very dishonest, because they are very dishonest, and they said that there's nothing else that could have happened. You know, they said for the story, for all the characters, there's no other ways that this could have gone. And it's like, yeah, fuck you, pretentious douchebags. Like, that's a total fucking lie. You're the writers, you control what happens. Fuck off with that bullshit. And so this show pissed me off so much, and I'll never get over it either. Like, it's just so awful what they did to this series. And so what I'm going to actually do is, I think that I'm going to remake the season into like a fan season, and off of Roblox. And so they have this new thing coming out called AI Voices. And I think that I'm going to try to do like a fan season that's remaking the last season of Better Call Saul. When I have the time and when I want to. You know, I'm not going to like... Sorry about that. I don't know why my throat's like that. I'm not going to like do it and then have like a deadline or anything. I'll just do it for fun, and it'll come out when it comes out. But it really did piss me off so much that I can't help myself. Like, it's infuriating what they did to the show, and how then they got all these fake reviewers to say like, oh, it was the greatest thing I've ever seen. And then you had a lot of these people who said, and they would have said it's the greatest thing they've ever seen regardless of what it was. So even if they did what they were originally going to do, all those same people, they would have still been saying the same things. They would have been saying, it's a masterpiece, it's the greatest thing ever made. And that's how you know that there's a problem, because the fans are not honest. Well, the fanboys. So that would be the honorable mention. Number 10, so now we're on to movies. I could probably do TV shows too. Maybe I'll do that next week. Yeah, I think I will. Because it's just harder with seasons, because I think a lot of the times, if you just let them have another season, they could fix a lot of problems, but not like with a show like Better Call Saul, where everything was definitive and it was this ending, and it was all designed around rushing to an end. So number 10 is Dr. Mordred. Now what happened here was that the people at Full Moon, they really wanted to make a Doctor Strange movie, and they pitched the idea to Marvel, and Marvel refused to give the rights to Doctor Strange to Full Moon. So what they did was they created Dr. Mordred, and I honestly think that this is one of the top 10 superhero movies ever made. Dr. Mordred as a character, he is a fantastic hero. and he's a really likable hero, but at the same time he does what needs to be done. He's not like these stupid MCU heroes where they're so conflicted and they don't know what to do, and they're a bunch of dumb fucks who can't decide what to do and everything. He knows he has to do what he has to do, and even if it comes with a cost. And at the end of the movie, he leaves his girlfriend and he's like, sorry, I gotta go save the universe. I have to go deal with some stuff. No, that wasn't the end of the movie. But he did leave her for a while, and he's like, sorry, bye-bye. And it's basically about this police officer, and she lives in an apartment building with Dr. Mordred. And she doesn't know who he is. She's trying to figure out what he's all about and everything. And at the same time, Dr. Mordred's brother has come to Earth, and he's this evil, kind of like Conan the Barbarian type of character, and it's basically those two characters battling it out. They have had this sibling rivalry forever. They are classic enemies. They are perfect, opponents to each other. And the thing is that this is a very good movie. But nowadays, I think that the actors are a little bit too old. And so I think that if you remade the movie with younger actors, you could create a franchise out of Dr. Mordred. And I think in particular, if you could actually keep the villain guy, because I don't think... No, you'd have to recast him. But you could still use like the same effects for the most part. Just update the effects a little bit. But there's some really cool stop motion at the end, and you could do that as well. And I really think that Dr. Mordred, though, deserves a lot more respect and attention. And honestly, Full Moon, they make these like $10 movies nowadays. So, maybe save up the budget for 10 Full Moon movies and use it to just make one Dr. Mordred movie. And you could do anything. I mean, it's based off of Doctor Strange. So you could take, technically, like any of the Doctor Strange characters and just change them a little bit, and you could make your sequel, or you can make your remake into like this awesome thing. Like it has a lot of potential, this superhero story. So number 9 is Kiss of the Vampire. This is also a pretty good movie. There's only 2 like pretty good movies on the list, and so all the rest of them I don't really like very much. Kiss of the Vampire is about a couple, and they run out of gas, and they're stuck in this town, and they're targeted by this vampire family, and they're kind of tricked into, the wife gets trapped there, and she gets turned into a vampire, and there's all this, and then the lady vanishes treatment happens to the husband, where everyone pretends like she never existed. It's kind of like all those missing person situations that happen in these like vacations that people go on, and then a person goes quote unquote missing, and then they pretend like, oh, we don't know what happened, wink wink, and you know that they probably did something to that person, and that there was some shady things going on. It's the same type of thing. It's very creepy and understated. And there's this really fantastic Van Helsing character, and he does black magic, he stakes vampires, he does anything. Like, he is not just gonna say like, oh, I'm not gonna do a black magic ritual to defeat these bad guys because I can't do that. He'll do anything to defeat evil. And so he's really badass. And he even kills his daughter. I mean, his daughter turns into a vampire and he kills her. And he's just like, he stakes her while she's in the middle of having her funeral. I mean, he is just so savage and so cool. And the ending of this movie is iconic, where they do a ritual and it summons like thousands of vampire bats to kill this evil cult of vampires. And it's probably the coolest movie ending I've ever seen, or like the top 10 movie endings. This would be up there. This movie has a lot of potential, I feel. You know, instead of making the 1000th Dracula movie, just make a movie off of Kiss of the Vampire, and then make a series off of this. Make a series about a Van Helsing who is willing to do anything. He's willing to get his hands dirty. He's willing to use very questionable tactics to defeat evil, and have like this really creepy story with this cult of vampires. And they don't even really go much into it, but they set up a lot of really good lore. Like, almost like being a vampire it's something that they really like, and they have an addiction to being a vampire, and they really love it, and it's almost like a fetish or something. It's really creepy. And there's so much potential with this movie. It was a pretty good movie, but if you remade it and you made it into a series, I feel like you could do a really good series. And I don't know exactly who you cast as each character. That would be a separate discussion, but it doesn't matter. Like, the movie is just, it's ripe for being remade. And you don't even have to change the music either. Like, the music is so perfect. It's probably one of my favorite film scores I've ever heard. And so all you have to do is just make a new movie and put the same music underneath it, and it'll still be perfect. Number 8 is The Tenant. Now, this is a movie starring someone who also wrote and directed it. This was a very disappointing movie. It's basically about this guy played by Roman Polanski, and he moves into this apartment only to get really freaked out by what is seemingly going on there. And for instance, they have a community bathroom, and he looks out at nighttime and he sees people go in there and they're just staring at the bathroom wall. And it's so creepy because it's like, what are they doing? Why are they just mindlessly staring at this wall? There's a hole in the wall too where there's like someone's tooth, and it's just stuck inside the wall. I mean, there's some really creepy things. And the creepiest part is that he's like, where did the guy who used to live here go? And he's in like a mental hospital, and he's just laying in bed and with a bandage over his head, and he's like, "Ugh!" And there's so many things set up brilliantly in this movie. So many different plot elements that could have led to something epic. And instead, it leads to the most mundane, boring answer for what is going on. Basically, the reveal is that the main guy, he has a problem. He has a mental issue, and he is schizophrenic or something. I don't know what you call it. He's paranoid, though. He's paranoid schizophrenic, and he goes crazy. Everyone's trying to help him, but he's just so crazy, and finally, he dresses up in drag and he kills himself. And it's actually pretty funny because it doesn't work the first time, and so then he crawls back upstairs and then jumps off a second time. I really think that this had the potential to be a great movie because it almost had a Shining quality to it. There was a very creepy underbelly to this movie because of the person who made it, number one. But number two, I really expected there to be a more interesting story going on than just he's paranoid and he has a mental problem. Like, snooze. That's just very, very boring. And so I think that you could remake this movie. Obviously, get somebody else to do it, not this person, and just have it be a completely different thing that's going on. You know, have it be something interesting, something like maybe there's a serial killer living in the building and he's trying to make the guy go crazy because he doesn't want him to find something. I don't know. Like, you know, something interesting. It was just very expected for that to happen. So, number 7 is Devil's Wedding Night, or The Devil's Wedding Night. This is a very corny, so good that it's bad 1970s movie. It's all about this guy, and he has to go to Castle Dracula in order to get the ring of Nibelungen, which is a real thing in the movie. And he also has a twin brother. And one of the unique things about the movie is that it is actually one actor playing himself and his twin brother. And he goes to Castle Dracula. It's a really, really... It just becomes really goofy and really kind of boring. He meets like a vampire countess. He has sex with her. She does like this ritual where she has the ring, and the ring is like the MacGuffin of the movie, and she summons like 5 virgins to come to the castle, and so that she can sacrifice them all. And then the twin brother comes and he turns evil, and the countess turns him into a vampire. And then what happens is that she wants to get married to the evil twin brother, and everything goes awry. There's also a girl who needs to be saved too, just some random girl. It might have been one of the virgins, I can't remember. And the good twin, he saves the girl, and he gets the ring of Nibelungen, and he kills all the bad guys. It's actually really cool at the end of this movie. It's a little bit like Castlevania meets John Wick. And what happens is that he disguises himself as his evil brother, and then they're going through the wedding, and he's supposed to sacrifice the girl. And instead, he starts killing all the bad guys that are there, and he gets an axe and he just starts chopping off their heads. And then he fights this other vampire who, I gotta say, I saw this trailer when I was a kid. I got really freaked out by this trailer. I thought it was one of the scariest trailers I've ever seen. And one of the scariest things about the trailer was this creepy looking bald guy in this brown, like, robe outfit thing, and he looked like he could be a really terrifying villain. Well, in the movie, he is just a goofy goofball who gets killed in like 2 seconds. He gets thrown out the window and stabbed. I really think that this movie had the potential to be epic. Like, I mean, like, epic is in franchise potential. You have a castle, the middle of the night, twin brothers, one is good, one is evil. You have a vampire countess. You have a weird vampire bald guy. you have a cult of bad guys running around, and it's like Castlevania meets John Wick. And the moment when you realize that the good twin is actually alive, it's just so cool, because it's like, wow, that was not expected. That was one good thing about this movie. And so I think, take this movie, make it, remake it, and put like Keanu Reeves is the main character and his twin brother. And you'd have to change the story quite a bit. I mean, it is a little ridiculous, this whole twin brother thing with the ring, where, oh, I forgot, the evil twin brother, he wants this powerful ring so that he can settle some gambling debts. So you'd have to change the story around a little bit, but there is potential there to make a really, really good movie. Now, number 6, this was one of my worst movies of 2019. It's called The Jesus Rolls. And it's based off of the character the Jesus from The Big Lebowski. And I was really excited for this movie because, you know, we've never gotten a Big Lebowski follow-up, even though I feel like it needs a follow-up of some kind. You know, maybe if it's like, you could actually make an original story and then just show the Big Lebowski characters and what they're doing now in the middle of that story. You know, you don't really have to make it a full sequel if you don't want. But I was really excited for this because I thought, oh, John Turturro has an idea to make a spin-off about his character, and it's going to be like this crazy, funny character study that really goes into his character, and it's a really cool one movie thing. But he ruined it. He totally ruined it, John Turturro. He, instead of making an original story, he decided to remake some French comedy from the 1970s. And so it's like, what? Why? Like, that's the question, is like, why? And there's so many things that he ruins about his character. Like, there is a joke in The Big Lebowski where obviously he is a pedophile character, and he did expose himself to a minor. Well, in The Big Lebowski, in the Jesus Rolls, John Turturro turns it into a joke, and he turns it into this really cringeworthy scene where he's comparing sizes with a kid in the bathroom. And it's like, oh, he was just comparing sizes. And it's like, oh, like, you ruined that. Like, you ruined... This character could have been like a flawed character. He could have been somebody who you don't necessarily root for, but, you know, you just want to see what happens to him. But instead, they just turn it into a joke. And basically, the whole movie is about him and this random guy and this random girl, and they're kind of like a polyamorous couple where they like to have sex with each other, and it's really weird and odd, and ugh. Like, this is a really weird, bad movie, and they keep on going to the same locations over and over. There's this whole random plot where Susan Sarandon comes, and she kills herself in a motel room, and Pete Davidson is in the movie. Ugh. And he plays this guy who's like really good at having sex, and so the woman starts having sex with him like all the time. Like, it's really, really bizarre. It's so bad. It's so horrible. And so what I would like to do is take this movie and remake it and make it good. Like, I already pitched a couple ideas in the original review of this movie. It just wipe this off the face of the earth. This was a terrible movie, and it all happened because the Coen brothers let him make it, and they let him use the Jesus character, and all they had to do was say, "Hey, we'll let you do it. Just let us see the script." And then he could show them the script, and they'd be like, "Actually, you just make this your own thing, buddy." Like, there really was no point to having him be the Jesus. I mean, they show him with his bowling ball on the poster. He only bowls for like 1 second in the whole movie. Even though he's supposed to be like this pro bowler character in The Big Lebowski. He only bowls for like 1 second. So it's really, really bad. He basically just used the Big Lebowski name just so that you would watch this really awful French comedy thing. Number 5 is The Garbage Pail Kids. This was a movie that was originally supposed to be an R-rated 80s horror movie made by the guy who did Ghoulies 3. And he used to be a very popular makeup effects artist before he died, unfortunately. And it was going to be a really terrifying, creepy story about putting Cabbage Patch Kids in a garbage pail, pouring toxic waste on them, and then they come out as Garbage Pail Kids and kill everyone. It sounds like it would be a fun and good movie. Well, they ruined that because the studio thought, we need to make a kids film. And this is a typical downfall of a lot of movies, is they're like, let's make this R-rated movie, and then the studio will be like, no, let's make a kids film. Like, yeah, fuck off with your kids films. You don't even make good kids films. And so the movie turned into what is essentially one of the worst movies ever made. I mean, there's so many bad things about it. I don't even need to go into it. It painfully bad, painfully cringe. It is a very good movie, though. Like, I do find a lot of enjoyment out of watching it, even though I know it's terrible. But they need to make a good Garbage Pail Kids movie. Those Garbage Pail Kids trading cards are really, really cool. They're really popular. I feel like if you made a proper horror movie out of these characters, you could make a lot of money. You could make a lot of money off of these characters. And you could have a franchise, because in each one you could have new Garbage Pail Kids come in. And, whatever happens, happens. You could even have some of the same actors come back for little cameo roles, but I think this is one of the top examples that needs a revitalization. Number 4 is Magnolia. This is a 3-hour-long, pretentious melodrama, and it's really unfortunate because it totally does not deliver on the premise that it sets up. Basically, it starts off and they show these true crimes where these very coincidental things happened, like very weird coincidences where people just so happen to be in these places, and these things just so happened to turn out these certain ways, and it's very eerie, and it's sort of like truth is stranger than fiction. And the whole movie is basically telling you there these 9 characters, they're going to connect somehow by the end of the movie. And what happens is these 9 characters never connect. The only way that they quote-unquote connect is that near the end, it rains frogs. And so that's the way that they decided to connect them. And they're like, ha, we technically connected them. And it's like, yeah, no you didn't. F off. So remake this movie, same premise, truth is stranger than fiction, and then really make a good movie where 9 unique characters meet up and interact in some way. And it could be really good. I don't know, this movie, for a lot of the movie, the same things kind of happen over and over again. There's a kid at a game show. He's nervous. He needs to pee. They show that over and over again. There's a guy. He's really in love with this guy at a bar. They show that over and over and over again. And they just keep doing that for 3 hours. And I wished instead of that they would have done what they promised. Like, this movie didn't really need to be 3 hours. Like, that wasn't the requirement. The requirement was that these characters would meet up and that they would interact with each other. So I feel like you need to make that happen. Number 3 is My Soul to Take. This is a very interesting Wes Craven movie, because Wes Craven basically used it as an excuse to practice for Scream 4. And it is a very bad, good movie. It's insane. It's a crazy movie. There's so many twists and turns that it's kind of like ridiculous. And funnily enough, like, I had all these ideas to make a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel trilogy, but the majority of those ideas I saw in this movie. And I thought, this is really weird, because this movie, it's basically what that Nightmare on Elm Street would have been like. It's like the exact same idea for like the whole thing almost. And so I think that, though, that you could remake this movie and you could make it really good. It had a lot of potential, this story. So you have this serial killer, and he dies, or something happens that's very mysterious. They don't reveal it. And then you have the son of his. He had a son and a daughter, and the son, he is basically made to look like he's the killer the whole movie, because he's related to the serial killer. And it's kind of like this mystery where people are getting killed off, and you have to figure out who the killer is. Is it the son? Is it his friend? Is it this other guy? Is it his sister? Like, who is the fucking killer? Like, they do not figure it out until like the last 10 minutes of the movie. And it just goes in all these crazy directions. I feel like if you really focused in on the core story of this movie, you could tell a really good movie. Even though it was recently made, I feel like this is a prime example of a movie that needs to be remade. It's a movie that had a lot of potential, but it didn't turn out very well. And so, remake it and fix what was bad and make this into a series. Number two is actually a part 3. Jeepers Creepers 3. I'm a big fan of Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2. Obviously, I did not watch Jeepers Creepers Reborn. I had no interest in watching that. And the thing about this series is that if they had just made the third one before people started crying and complaining about the person who made the series, then it just would have been done. But instead, I'm going to tell you guys the story of Jeepers Creepers 3. So Victor Salva, who's a very controversial figure because he did a terrible thing in the 80s and 90s. He went to prison for it, and it's all over with. Well, he had this really good script for Jeepers Creepers 3. It was called like Jeepers Creepers Cathedral, and it was going to take the sister from the original movie and have a final confrontation with Jeepers Creepers. And a lot of people read the script because it leaked online, and apparently it's really, really good. And it's like, what if the script to Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was just sitting around, you know? Like, that's how good the script is, apparently. And it would have been a great conclusion to the series. Well, Victor took the script to part 3 to this really shitty indie movie company, and the stupid company, they didn't know what was up. And so they said, well, Victor, we don't really know if the Jeepers Creepers series is popular anymore, so you need to prove to us that it's still popular, and then we'll give you the money to make your Jeepers Creepers 3 script. So he had to basically make this shitty improvised movie where it's basically a Jeepers Creepers part 1.5. It takes place after the first one but before the second. And it's a really mediocre movie. I mean, I kind of like some stuff in it, but as time has gone on, it's just gotten really forgettable. And it's like, you know, I'd rather just watch the first two, honestly. I don't really care about watching the third one again. And I just... that company was really shady, too. Like, they lied. They said that the third and fourth one were already made. And they said that they were going to start posting pictures to tease the third and the fourth one. So the company was like a really shady, bad movie company that made the third movie. So then what happened after the third one is that a bunch of people finally found out, like, history. And so they got mad and cried. And so this other shitty-ass company got the rights or something. And they basically wanted to separate themselves as much as possible from Victor in his original series. So they made Jeepers Creepers Reborn. And it's so hilarious because, like, even though they went to all this trouble to make it, like, not made by him and all this crap, you still had all these pussy-ass bitches, like this one guy on YouTube who, like, counts the kills in horror movies, and they're like, I refuse to watch any Jeepers Creepers movie. Wah. And it's like, God, you're such a fucking baby. Like, you won't watch a fucking movie. Like, God, grow up. Like, it's a fucking movie. It's not gonna hurt you. And so, even though they went to all that trouble, Jeepers Creepers Reborn was, like, unanimously thought of as one of the worst horror movies ever made. A lot of people put it as, like, one of the worst movies of the year in general. So it's been proven now that, like, just because Victor Salva isn't involved, that isn't going to automatically make people like a Jeepers Creepers movie. So you need to go back and listen. It's just for this one script. This one script is really, really good. It would tie things together and conclude the series. Make the original Jeepers Creepers 3 script the way that he wanted to make it. You could even have him come back to direct. It's not going to matter. The people who won't watch it, they wouldn't have watched it anyway because they're a bunch of bitches. And then make Jeepers Creepers Cathedral. So that's my suggestion. And then after that, in like 10 years, if you want to remake it and not have him be involved, then that's what you should do. But don't do this thing where you like do Jeepers Creepers Reborn, because it was an epic failure. Nobody liked it. It was a piece of trash. Nobody wanted it. They wanted Jeepers Creepers Cathedral. Number 1 is The Reflecting Skin. I've already talked about this movie ad nauseum. Basically, it's a story about a kid who discovers this woman might be a vampire, and at the same time, a lot of other stuff is going on, and it all takes place in rural Utah or Idaho, and all the adults are evil, and all these kids are getting killed, and he thinks that it might be this vampire that's doing it. And it's a very bad, pretentious art movie with a focus on the art over storytelling. They call it like an impressionist movie, which I think that that's a bunch of bullshit. There's no such thing as an impressionist movie, in my opinion. And it's just the fact that this movie had all this potential. There were so many plot points in this movie that led to nowhere. There were so many characters that they never got to do anything cool or interesting to add to the plot, but they were set up to do something interesting. So I really think that you could remake this movie and just do something good. Like, just take all of the plots and do the opposite of what they did in the movie. Just take all those characters and have them get to do something cool, and just do the movie that they didn't want to do in the 80s and 90s. I mean, it could be really good. I'm not kidding. This is a movie that is so good. It could be so good that it could stand up there with like The Lost Boys and Fright Night and all those 80s and 90s vampire movies. It could be really good. So, that's the top 10 movies that I think should be remade. And I'll tell you guys something. As soon as I get the money and I get the attention, I will purchase the rights to The Reflecting Skin, and I will remake it myself. Because like, it's that bad. Like, it is something where I just see it and it's like, oh, like the movie that could have been. And the thing is that you still could have had these aging messages and these aging themes inside a typical narrative. You still could have made the movie that we expected while having the aging themes underneath and more subtle and understated and smartly delivered, instead of just, oh look, the kid runs into the middle of the cornfield and he cries. That's the ending of this movie. So anyways, please like this video, comment, and then subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more list videos like this. Goodbye everybody, see you soon.